G'day everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Australian Property Investment Podcast. I'm really fortunate, we get some incredible people that want to be part of our podcast series. When we reach out to them and they say, yeah, I'll be there, it shows a wonderful attitude. When I take that ethos and I'm like, hey, come on the journey with us. And Michelle May, no hesitation to jump on when we said, hey, would you like to be part of this?
No, absolutely not. No.
I want to say thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it. You've got certain energy about you, having a chat before, and I feel like when we're talking and you're talking about, how you approach being a buyer's agent, how you take a client brief, for example, I guess there's obviously a huge amount of experience you've got. What are we talking, 25 years?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah?
Yes, absolutely.
Doesn't look like it. I can say it's a very nice compliment to you.
Thank you. I'm probably one of the OG buyer's agents here in Australia.
25 years. I mean, again, we talk about and I think we'll have you chat about kind of where your industry is going at the moment. So obviously, when you started, you're almost convincing people to use a buyer's agent. Now you're talking about, hey, I've got competing briefs and I can't work with you. So effectively, you're oversubscribed, right?
Yes, and it's a very wonderful position to be in, and we don't take that for granted one second. Every client is unique to us, and the fact that they're wanting to reach out and work with us is a huge responsibility. A huge amount of trust is placed in us. So every journey is a different one. So still loving it though.
Excellent, very good. As long as that fire's alive, it keeps burning within you, you're going to show up and do your best. So we'll talk a little bit about your journey. We'll talk about where you're currently working, but your focus predominantly is in Sydney, and that kind of cuts across, say, the inner west, a little across to Bayside, north, south. I mean, Sydney's a beast, right? So trying to know markets within markets and get really familiar. So take me through 25 years probably gives you a good level of insight into knowing, the little nooks and crannies inside suburbs as well. But it's also a lot changing infrastructure projects that are coming through. So take me through when you kind of pan out and take a view of Sydney, what's been your view and how much has changed over the last couple of decades?
Well, when I came to Australia, I initially started in Brisbane, very different beast. And as you said, it was very much an unknown, a buyer's agent at that time. And sales agents in particular looked at us with very weary eyes going, you're going to take a piece of my commission? How does this work? Why do buyers even need help? We're here to help them. Then coming to Sydney, it was, I had what are those? BlackBerry and still with map on my lap trying to navigate the city. I worked for an agency. I was headhunted to work for an agency in the East initially. I got to know that very intimately, had a lot of help. It was very much a team effort because I think as a buyer's agent, you can't just go out on your own and just call yourself an expert. It's really important to sort of glean information from other locals and getting to know the agents as well is such a integral part of that knowledge that we bring to the clients. And so now we focus, like you said, inner west, eastern suburbs, lower North Shore, but we're finding that we're doing a lot more business now in the St. George River area, around the Shire as well a little bit. Purely because of the cost of property nowadays. People are used to come to us and say, well, we want to live in the east, can't afford it, let's move to the inner west. Now they're coming to us and say, we want to live in the inner west, can't afford it, let's see what's happening south of the Cooks River. So with that, my team and I have been learning along the way, and with that, like you said, comes different infrastructure projects, things like flood mapping, not just from natural bodies of water, but overland flooding, which as locals, we experience, especially.
If you lived in Sydney, all you've known is rain for the last few years.
Particularly on Saturdays, might I add.
Every parent's nightmare, Saturday morning rain. Right, we're spending the weekend indoors.
I know. And for me, driving to inspections on the weekend, usually my biggest fight is those parents going to sports.
Yeah.
But over the past number of weekends, it's just been trying to evade all the, the queues because of water everywhere. So knowing those things and being able to advise clients on that is crucial.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's almost like you get a sneak peek about how every property handles copious amounts of rain at the moment.
Absolutely. I actually do enjoy looking at properties when it's really bad weather because it's like, well, this is as bad as it's going to get. Yeah. Where's the water pooling? Is it in the backyard or is it like cascading down because the whole property needs new guttering or whatever? How does it feel inside? Like, is it dank and moist? And Yeah. So it's actually, if you're out there looking for property, it's actually a really good time to look.
Yeah, well said. You mentioned there before around people, I guess, migrating south or even north. It has that same net effect out of Sydney, right? So I'd say that people, northwest towards the hills will then tend to migrate towards the central coast. People kind of inner west and below will then move to, say, the Shire. I mean, we're down the coast, and a lot of people down towards, Thirroul, Woonona, South Coast, even Shell Harbour, came out of the inner west too. So you probably see that migration south a little bit more. And the people there can't afford, so they move further south, Jervis Bay, even going further south to Bateman's Bay, for example. So we've seen that knock-on effect when prices have pushed people out.
Yeah.
They then move down, the locals get pushed out there, then has that knock-on effect. So when you're handling buyer briefs, for example, and I get this all the time at buyers agents, I think you're trying to read between the lines about what people think they want versus what they actually want.
Yes.
And I think part of that is when they say something's non-negotiable, like a suburb, and you're here to go, that actually is very negotiable because you can't afford to buy in that suburb, right?
Yeah.
Take me through, how do you what's the word? Train a client. How do you then get them to understand that what they think is non-negotiable is actually very negotiable?
I guess, well, one thing that really helps me is the fact that I'm Dutch and I'm very direct and I'm very to the point, but with love and care.
Yeah.
My job is to really cut through the wishful thinking that they've probably built up either by themselves or as a couple, based on what they see in the media, based on the fact that their dad bought a property in 1989 and thinks that he's a property mogul now, and
Let me
all
tell
those.
you, the real estate agent drove you to that inspection, and now you get maybe 20 minutes on a weekend to look at it.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of things that are usually going on, right? And so they've built up this picture of what they think they deserve to get for their budget, and what they need and is non-negotiable, like you said. So for me, I think it's the experience of talking to people for so many years now is that we have really in-depth sort of taking conversations. And, we come in armed with a lot of research. So ahead of time, I know what kind of suburbs they want to look at. And so we look at and say, okay, well, this is the median price for that type of property today. Yeah. And here's a couple of examples as to what you could have bought. This is currently for sale. Tell me how you feel about those properties. And so we can talk them through things that are reasonable and things that are potentially, we can maybe work with them, change them a little bit. If I see a lot of red flags, we've actually got a service called a focus session. So this is for the people who literally have no idea, who potentially are not local to Sydney, are expats, have never bought a property before, are very nervous. But it's also a sort of a do-it-yourself starter. So we take their brief and we really break it down for them in a 2.5-hour workshop and go, okay, so these are the facts and figures, these are the median prices, these are the sales. Now, what else could you have bought? What are the other alternative areas that you should be looking at, in our opinion? Yeah. This is what's currently for sale. Let's talk about the pros and cons of these properties. So in this 2.5-hour sessions, they're literally on a roller coaster ride with us, and we arm them with so much knowledge to go, okay, I can put that wishful thinking to one side because we now know what is actually achievable. Because I think a lot of buyers, and you would see that in your space, waste so much time chasing the wrong properties. Yeah. And then what happens is they get buyer fatigue, and they then end up buying a property that they never should have bought in the first place, pay too much money for, just for it to be done.
That's exactly what we say.
And it's very sad to see.
I just want this pain to end. And so generally what you'll see is there's these abnormal house sales and people scratch their head going, how come that sold for that much? It's like they just got over it and they wanted this pain to disappear. Yeah. Or had a premium because the parents are literally around the corner of the school that they really wanted is there, and there's something intangible there as well. But you're spot on.
I was at an auction recently and I won it for the client, and the people opposite me were a young couple. This was in Kingsgrove, and I could see it in their faces. They were desperate. And so I did a few maneuvers. They thought I was nuts, gave up. and I want it for a client. So afterwards I went up to them and I'm like, you guys have been looking for a while, right? And they were like, yeah, how did you know? And I was like, you kind of gave it away, you know, like, and they said, actually, we're really glad we didn't buy this because we actually went way over our budget. We should have stopped.
Yeah, right.
Right? So I'm like, guys, you need to, like, come chat with me. I can help you. But listen to the podcast and, you know, there's lots of tips. And this is why I do podcasts like you know, to help educate people to make smarter decisions. Don't go led up the garden path, all that kind of stuff.
The podcast is, and I mean, people listen. So people that have been listening kind of got used to what content we're putting out. But that's how it started, because you and I could have conversations with people time and time again, but they'll forget it over the phone, and we find ourselves repeating the same thing over and over again. It's like, I think we had this conversation about 2 weeks ago, and they can't retain that information because so much is coming at them. Versus when you go, hey, here's my podcast, listen to it, because they've opted in, they've made the space to listen to it. And now their ability to retain that information goes right up through the roof. And so you and I then having much elevated or better conversations because not having to repeat the same information time and time again. So, I mean, your podcast is by your side, which I love the name of it, because that's what you're doing. You're by people's side when they're buying. And I think, that's where it's such a useful medium, isn't it?
100%. And mine, you know, like very short, snappy, 10-minute episodes usually. This is what you need to do. Think about this. Do that. Do not do that. You know, and they're just very, just useful, I hope. And we do get a lot of feedback on this. People find us, become clients through the podcast, which is really awesome. Yeah. So it's nice to be able to put that out there. Also for people who are not necessarily in our catchment area, you know, it's still relevant for people in other areas of Australia. So
absolutely, I mean, the principles are all the same regardless of where you're buying. Negotiate with the agent, find the right property, avoiding a lemon, you know, or potential, you know, expensive mistakes that you don't know what you don't know. You're the eyes and ears as well. I appreciate that. So take me through when you're going out and inspecting. You said this before, like you're pounding the pavement on Saturdays, you're going out and about. You're having conversations with agents that generally a punter isn't having because they're seeing you in a very different light.
Yes, true.
Real estate agents, so they're probably more open to giving you information that maybe someone else, not that they're withholding information, but you're having a very different style of conversation with an agent. So what are you finding is the rhetoric at the moment in the Sydney market? And I guess behind that is 13 rate rises, people sat back waiting, going, okay, this will be my opportunity to get into the market. The fixed rate cliff never happened and there's no bargains to be had. And so you've got this despondent group of buyers that are waiting, and all the meantime is prices have gone up. Their savings have been eroded because of the cost of living. They're scratching their head, but agents are going, mate, this property is selling with or without these clients at whatever price they think it's worth.
100%. So, look, at the end of the day, when it comes to the areas that are, you know, metropolitan Sydney, there is a scarcity of property, whether you're buying or you're renting. So for good quality property, there's always going to be underlying demand. And as a buyer, please do not think that you are in, you know, a prime position, because there's a lot of money still in Sydney looking to pay top dollar for property, for the right property. So I sometimes have people coming to me saying, well, I'm not prepared to pay this for that. And the fact of the matter is that really, and I said this to you before, the market doesn't care what you think. Because if you don't pay it, someone else will, you know. If the property is not right for you, then okay. But you've got to be prepared to pay market value if it is on the open market going to auction, or, you know, there will be competition. I think that buyers, you know, if they keep waiting, they're going to be priced out of the market. That's the truth of the matter. You know, property prices are going up at a faster rate than what most people get in, you know, a bonus or, you know.
We've done the numbers, Michelle. I mean, average house price growth, median growth is about $1,600 a week.
Yeah, well, there you
Average savings is sitting at $300 to $500 a week. So, you know, if you're paying rent, for example, and you're saving on top of that a little bit, you are not keeping pace with property price growth. That doesn't matter.
No.
I mean, Perth is leading the charge at the moment, right? So whether you're an investor or owner-occupied, this market's happening with or without you.
Exactly. And that's really hard to hear. And it's usually the woman with the red hair that You think you're going to give you hope, but she's going to be the smiling assassin and say, I'm sorry, but that's the reality. So unless you're willing to look at alternatives and be smart about your choices, you're going to be left behind. And that's really tough. Sometimes people come to us, they go, no, we're going to do it on our own. I'm literally working with people now that first contacted us 2 years ago.
Wow.
2 years ago. And, we're now actively working with them as a client. Now, their increase in budget is not as much as what the market has gone up by. So they've had to, the first time 2 years ago, they didn't quite accept what I was telling them. But now they've had to take an even harder adjustment, if you like, into what it is that they're going to be able to afford. So it's tough. It's really tough. But I think if you're focused and you're realistic and you focus on A-grade property, then rather than watching the market go up, you can be part of that market going up.
Well said.
Right? And that then once you make your next step on the property ladder, because that first one is the most crucial one, if you compromise on quality there, whether it's the property itself or the location, you are going to have an underperforming property, i.e. performing under the median price growth. You are going to lose your foothold on the market. What you want is that A-grade property that's going to perform over the median price growth. That will give you leverage for your next property.
Well said. Absolutely nailed it. That is generally where you find people get stuck, especially, owner-occupied is different because if you're in your home, okay, great, you're not paying rent and you've got some security.
But I disagree with you on that, to be honest, because your home should be your best performing asset. It needs to be your best performing asset, because what if, God forbid, you lose your job, you get sick, your child gets ill, you get a job in Saudi or in Europe. We were talking about those two destinations. And you have to sell your house in a hurry. Then what happens? If you've got a shitty property on Parramatta Road, excuse my French, they're in a down market, people are not going to come and look and pay a premium for your property. If interest rates continue to grow up, there may be more people in distress, there may be more properties potentially coming on the market that are subpar, then you're not going to make as much money than if you would have had an A-grade property in the best street in Dulwich Hill, for example. So I always stress that if you're an owner-occupier, you've got to put your investor hat on. If you're an investor, you've got to put your owner-occupier hat on, because your tenants, you're going to get a much better quality tenant if you actually provide them with a quality property.
Wow. I love the conviction. Yeah, most people let it go, but I think the fact that you doubled down on that says that there's a huge level of conviction in what you truly believe in. And I do temper that because I think I want to set some people's expectations that if you're in your house and there's some security, awesome.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely spot on. You want every property that you own to be A grade. You want that to increase in value, because at that point you have options available to you. Like you're in a great property and it needs a small amount of cosmetic renos where you've already got equity on tap. Straight away, there you go.
Yeah.
Or you want to start your investing journey. Your home then becomes a great place to tap into some equity to start your investment journey as well. So I think, you're spot on. When you buy well, it's not simply a matter of just getting into the market. It's a matter of now outperforming that market. And how do you do that?
Yeah.
Well, you don't do that by expecting to pay below market value or expecting a bargain. You're going in with the wrong intention.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, we still get amazing deals happening. I bought...
But you're a trained negotiator.
Yes, yeah.
And every buyer's agent
I should hope I get a better result than the average Joe.
You get paid a success fee.
Yeah. No, well, yeah, we get paid. We the way structure we work is a flat fee.
Yeah.
So it's, we will do our utmost regardless of what the purchase price is.
Because that's a controversial one, because you see buyers agents now move into a percentage model on owner-occ, and some people go, I don't know, I'm not sure this fits with me because I want a flat fee. Yeah. That's how it used to be, and now I feel like it's moved into more a percentage model as well.
Look, I think that there have always been the players that were doing percentage, but for me, it couldn't be more of a clear conflict of interest then it hit you in the face. Like, seriously, I am paid to help you get the best possible quality property for the best price.
Yes.
So why the hell would I charge you a percentage? Because then I'm cutting my own fee. I bought a $5 million apartment recently. I paid $475 for it. Right? There was just a great opportunity. Yep. What would the incentive be for me if I was like, hey, I'm charging you, a percentage? No, I charge my client a flat fee based on the complexity of the search. So I tell them upfront what the fee is going to be.
Yeah.
If they're happy with that, they sign. If they're not, then that's okay. But it also means that for the first home buyers, we also know that the younger group of buyers who've never done this before, it's a lot more hand-holding for them. It's a lot more intensive for us as a team to navigate them through it, because there'll be a lot more questions and more potentially, building that trust and unsurety of, oh my gosh, this is a big decision, as opposed to the people with $10 million properties who've done this 10 million times and are like, yeah, very hands off. It's okay. Just give me what I need,
Absolutely.
So I don't necessarily think it's right to charge people who've got 10 million a mozza, as they say, versus those people that are new to it all. Do you know what I mean? For me, ethically, maybe it's a poor business decision, but I think my clients appreciate it. I think, I'm doing okay as a business owner. So yeah, that's the way I run things.
I appreciate it. We were talking before, you got a son and daughter.
Yeah.
High school age.
Yeah.
And you look at the Sydney market, do you, as a parent, get concerned about their ability to buy property in Sydney? Or do you go, no, I'm setting them up for success and I'll be able to find a way to get them into this market? What are your thoughts as a parent?
It is very stressful, I think, to be honest. I come from Holland, where the system's very different. The vast majority of people in Holland do not buy their property; they rent for a lifetime.
Why is that different to here? Like, why don't people have that high level ownership?
Well,
because that's quite a European.
It is a European thing, yeah. And I think the system is very different there. People who have second, third, or fourth homes do not get tax break. In fact, they get taxed very highly because it's seen as a privilege. Okay. So the vast majority of properties for rent on the market are rent controlled and are owned by co-ops and the government. And so if it's someone who's got a wealthy, a good income, a good job, they would be renting a different property pool than someone who's on the dole, for example. So it's through all the way through society. And even there is hard to purchase, don't get me wrong. But I think here for my first home buyers, I think that, I'm seeing it, and I have been seeing the increase over the years, is that we really very rarely get first home buyers without support of their parents.
Absolutely.
So if you are a first home buyer who's unassisted and can't, take advantage of any of the grants and what have incentives, then my hat off to you, because it's very, very difficult. And there's more and more options available, in terms of rent vesting, but also a part share, as the government has, one of those grants, but also there's private companies that are doing it, offering your share of a property. So there's different options available, but I think it's going to be a reality that unless something changes significantly, that a lot of people will not own a property in their lifetime here in Australia.
It's a sad reality when you think about it, right?
100%.
You look at the size of the country.
It's a human basic need and right, as far as I'm concerned. I have quite strong opinions as to how they should change things. But I think culturally, Australia, looking at it still, I've been here a long time now, but looking at it from sort of an outsider view still, Australians have always, thought and expected to own a piece of dirt, Only recently they've started being okay with owning apartments and things like that. But now we're getting to the point where a lot of Australians are going to have to face owning nothing at all. And then with the system as it's set up, as a tenant, it's difficult, and of course, if you are an investor, you want to take advantage of the opportunities that you're given. So it's not. I'm not saying it's one side's fault or another, but it's something that needs to be looked at very closely, very closely.
Yeah. I've done a lot of reading into the home ownership, and I mean I think we're so attuned to it, so we're seeing all the articles that come out, whether it's on news, SMH, the AFR, for example, stay on top of all this. But do we stop migration? Immigration? We're already behind on the government's proposed building plans, and so there's got to be, I think, a property built. A couple of properties built every day to try and even soak up the current levels of demand, let alone everything that's coming through the pipeline. And builders in itself are just, there's no appetite for building, or the builder risk becomes a real issue as well. So where we are at the moment, there's such a disparity. You give this some time, call it the next 3 to 5 years, and it almost becomes exponential in terms of not only how out of grasp it comes for a lot of people, but how undersupplied this market truly will be, which then in turn people are scratching their head going, does that just mean prices will just continue to increase because there is a huge level of demand and a lower level of supply?
Yeah. Well, I mean, don't they say like you put 5 economists in a room and you get 10 different answers? I mean, everyone will have a different opinion depending on the skew that they have, and potentially the interest that they have.
Yes.
I think, we need people to come in and do jobs. I'm not anti-immigration by any stretch of the imagination. I'm an immigrant myself. I'm sorry. But it's not like the immigrants are the problem of the housing shortage. There is a systemic problem in housing. And for me, looking at real grassroots level, when I'm inspecting, for example, apartments, I am having real issues with the build quality. So it's all well and good for the government to say, yes, we're going to stamp out, we're going to build them like mushrooms, these apartments, 1.5 million properties. How many is it in the next number of years? Yeah. My issue is then when they roll off the conveyor belt, what have these buildings actually been signed off on? Because since the privatization of certification, I am seeing a massive decline in the quality. I'm talking buildings that haven't made the news, like the Mascot Towers, but are, when I read the strata reports, are saying with the structural engineering that, the reporting that was done after the builder has been called in to do rectification works, the reports are saying if this building does not get rectified immediately, it's in danger of collapse. Now that makes me shudder. And then this particular apartment that we were looking at then goes to auction for $1.2 million. That to me is a huge risk. So there's all these I feel like this Dutch person sticking my finger in the dike. There's all this water pouring through everywhere, and somebody needs to come up with looking at it holistically and say, okay, there's not one size fits all solution. We need to look at it from all angles and see how we can fix this. It's not just about getting rid of negative gearing, like boom. Is it maybe grandfathering? Is it maybe, Do
you think we'll see that though? I would say in our generation, but do you think there's a way to address the inequality in housing affordability?
Well, I just think that the government needs to, personally, I think the government needs to take a greater role in it. They need to take more ownership of the problem and not just make it a privatized issue. I think they need to look at negative gearing, but they also need to look at public housing, social housing. They're not the same. They're advertising all this social housing. It's not the same as public housing. Most of the public doesn't know the difference. So there's just not enough, I think, social webbing to really protect the most vulnerable in this society. Everyone deserves a right of a safe abode, whether that's renting or owning.
Yeah.
And we're seeing issues on both sides of the equation. Yeah. So I think for them to just, it's my issue with some of the governing that's going on. It seems like a popularity contest. You know, it's like, actually, can you just all shut up and do your job, like what you came here to do, rather than just, oh, well, you said this and, well, he said that. You know, it's just like playground bully stuff, right? Rather than just, I don't know. It's maybe a very simplistic way to look at it, but people are in dire need today, renting. People are getting left. You know, I'm looking at an apartment or townhouse I'm looking to purchase today. The owners, I think, are in financial distress because the tenancy is till January next year, right? You wouldn't ordinarily do that as an investor. I hear they're selling off more assets. The tenants in there have been there for a number of years. They've got a 2-month-old baby. So where are they going to go next? Because if this sells to an owner-occupier, that's another place off the rental market, right? So people keep saying, oh, these investors, you know, they should be, you know, paying more money, et cetera, et cetera. But the vast majority of investors are mum and dads buying one investment property and seeing that as their retirement fund, you know? It's not like all of them own, you know, 7, 20, 30 of them. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. You're spot on. So I get to that point then, you're talking about the investor market in Sydney. I mean, the big issue that we've got at the moment is around yields, particularly in Sydney. You probably see that in some other parts of the country, Melbourne as well. So are you taking buyer briefs for investors that are buying, and what type of assets are they looking at the moment?
So yes, we do work with investors, but it's not my bread and butter. So the vast majority of my clients tend to be owner-occupiers. Because we're buying sort of in that, you know, metropolitan Sydney, we tend to just look at apartments, older style apartment, red brick, smaller complexes, no fancy swimming pools, lifts and all this kind of stuff. Well, lifts, yeah, but not, you know, the superfluous gym that's dank and smelly that no one uses. Certainly no con chairs, that kind of thing. Yeah. Unless it's, you know, eastern suburbs, Potts Point, say, Elizabeth Bay, that kind of thing. But we do get a fair amount of, you know, up sort of sub 1.5 mil to 1.5 investors. And so I'm always looking for, again, A-grade property, you know, decent return. Not a high return, a reasonable return, because there's always that tipping point, isn't there, between capital growth and yield, really. So my philosophy, again, it's not wham bam, thank you, man. It's not fast and sexy. It's the slow burn. So I would say if you're thinking of getting rid of it, you know, sub 10 years, don't bother. There's probably other things that will make you more money. So that's what we tend to look for. Scarcity, you know. Scarcity, I would never advise to buy high density areas. Some areas we just don't touch at all. And also looking at age of the build. So as part of the service, we will always review the strata report. It's essential. You know,
critical.
We do a very thorough review of that, making sure that we're across everything that's happening. Yeah. I find that really reality is there's no such thing as a perfect building, you know, no such thing as a perfect house. There's always something. But it's about, you know, what is the community of strata doing about it? What have they done in the past? Is there a number of meetings a year? Is their building valuation up to date? Is it in line with the insurance? You know, what have they spent their money on? How many people are on the EC? It's a holistic view again. It's not just like, oh, they've only got 20 grand in the admin fund, like, let's walk away. No, it's like, okay, why have they only got 20 grand in the admin fund, you know? Have they got a capital works fund forecasting, you know, and are they adhering to that? So,
Well said. Well said. Yeah, having bought units in the past, I'm like, first thing you do is get on the EC and find out what's going on behind the hood, under the hood of this building. But then, even before you buy it, you're looking forensically through the strata report and finding out the health and condition of that building and that fund as well.
Absolutely.
I want to touch back to one of the points you said earlier around the banker mum and dad, or like getting to Sydney. And I think I see this across the board, whether younger Australians are trying to invest or whether they're trying to buy their own home. The research I did for my book was the banker mum and dad becomes like the 9th biggest lender in Australia.
Yeah.
Right. So when I'm talking about the 4 biggest banks who are amongst the most profitable in the world, not too far after that, we're coming to the banker mum and dad. And this is wrought with all sorts of, I mean, what you don't know is what you don't know as a parent. So every intention, but then some have a different consequence. So I'll give you one for context. So when a parent signs a stat deck that this is a non-refundable loan or gift, and then in the separation of a couple, then actually this ex-in-law, now the daughter or son-in-law, now gets to claim half of that cash.
Yes.
And it was always meant as a wink, wink, we'll give us the money back, but they've signed a stat deck, which then overrides that as well. So that's just one of the consequences. But I mean, in your brief, you probably come up, especially when parents are contributing. I have a saying: "There's no pay, no say." But when there's a pay, then there is a say. So you're probably dealing with parents again that have their own biases and their own say at the table when they've engaged you as a buyer's agent.
Yes.
So how does this conversation? What are the dynamics like? And for people that are listening, it's like how do you navigate family and finances, especially parents-in-law or parents or in-laws that are giving you cash?
Yeah, it's it's certainly a very new dynamic that we're working with. I'd say last 2 years or so, maybe 18 months even, where parents have become very involved to the point where I've actually turned parents away because they've inquired with us. And I'll never forget this. Is one lady inquired with my assistant Naomi, and this lady said, Naomi called me after. She's like, oh, I can't believe she said this. So this lady called up and said, so I'm helping my son and his wife buy a property because I'm reaching out to you because, quite frankly, he's an idiot and she's no better. So I need you to help me help them. And and it didn't get better after that because, of course, we're there to help. But when people are adults, I think they should be allowed to have a little bit of say of where they want to live or not. And it sounded like she wanted the ultimate control, right? So after talking with her again, I decided it wasn't the right idea because
that's an interesting one, isn't it? Like that's the word control. Like it's there's strings attached to this cash.
It's look, I think it's. May I go out on a limb and say it might be a generational thing, the control thing. Particularly that generation, obviously they've all done extremely well. Most of them extremely well from property.
Yes.
But they don't seem to realize that by and large it had nothing to do with their choice of property, but just time. So I have worked with parents and children where the parents were actually, they needed a lot more educating than the children. So as a buyer's agent, we put an extraordinary amount of time before someone signs up because I don't want there to be, unrealistic expectations of what they can purchase, but also not of us. So we have those hard conversations up front. And so if there is a layer of parentals involved, then we need to know, okay, that's fine. We're happy to work with you, but we need to know where do we draw the line. And like you said, what is it? No pay, no say. How much is this going to change the decision making? So it's all about, having clear and open communication up front. So usually I'm the one asking the awkward questions, and then they have to go away and discuss it amongst themselves and come back and go, okay, yes, this is how we're going to do things. Yeah. So my favorite way of working with, the bank of mum and dad is where the bank of mum and dad just goes, hey, Michelle, we're paying for your services. In you we trust. And that is our gift to our children, and we'll pay whatever part of the deposit, but you take them on that journey because we know that working with you, they're going to end up with a property that's much better value. They're going to pay a better price and a better quality property in the end. Oh, nice. So that's how I would, advise parents who want to help their children do it.
easier said than done because it's, and again, we see it from a finance perspective. It's almost like this, a bit of a monkey on the back financially, whether it's a guarantor and they're giving them a gift, and now the kids feel a little bit indebted. It changes the dynamics of the relationship. You know, they want to go off on a trip to Europe and they've still got this money owing to the parents, or they buy a new car. It's like, it's a small comment, which is, you're off to Europe, are you? And and it's, well, new car, and you still got this, you know, guarantor loan that you're trying to, or you should be, or could be trying to pay back.
Yes.
But you're trying to live your life at the same time. It's like, you wouldn't have known that dynamic existed until you got to the point that, you know, the deal is done.
Yeah. And that can get very uncomfortable, very uncomfortable very quickly. I worked with clients actually where the dad, we found the perfect off-market apartment, and I was going to be able to get it very much under market value again. It was an investor distressed, but it was vacant, so perfect. And the dad was like, well, no, I'm not helping my son buy this because it has a galley kitchen. And I said to him, I'm sorry, what? Well, I don't like galley kitchens. And I was like, well, I'm not. I was a bit taken aback, and I said to him, but how often will you actually be cooking in your son's kitchen? And he's like, I don't understand the question. I said, how often will you actually be using this galley kitchen in real terms? And he's like, well, no, I have no intention of cooking in my son's kitchen. And I said, well, your son has just told me that all he gets is Uber Eats because he works so hard. So I don't think you can veto this property because you don't like the look of the kitchen. Because, I mean, I didn't ask his wife, but he didn't strike me as someone who was in his own kitchen every day of the week, you know. So it's fun and games sometimes, but there you go.
Yeah. If you're talking to someone that's, you know, on the outer trying to get into the market, what would be one piece of advice you'd say to someone, apart from the obvious about get into the market? What is a helpful way that you go to frame it up to go to get into the Sydney market?
Okay. You have to really attack it with military precision. This is not a hobby. This is not fun. And many people, you know, they start off going to inspections and imagining themselves in a beautifully styled apartment, and, you know, they think it's fun at the beginning phase of it. But then when they've realised that they've been barking up the wrong tree because the property ended up going for much more money, and, you know, they're missing out on birthdays and bowling in the afternoon and whatever else, and it realize it's quite labor intensive, so they take time out of the market, and then they come back and realize, oh shoot, we should have gone for that one, but we missed. You know what I mean? It's like you've got to really attack this seriously. It's going to be a little bit painful for say 3 to 6 months, but then if you are diligent about it and do your research, you're going to end up with a property to live in, and then you can get on with the rest of your life. So get an excellent broker, you know, a financial person who can talk you through the process of getting you the best possible pre-approval ready, you know, clean up your financial diet, if you like, to make, I'm sure, you know, you have all the tips and tricks on how people best prepare for their paperwork. Do not go shopping without your wallet. Never do that, i.e. do not go and bid on properties without having your pre-approval in place. It's nothing more stressful than that, both for you and your broker. So you need to know what you're going to be able to spend, you know, so do that first. I always say to people, before you go to any inspections that are listed, look at the sold section of domain and real estate. Just put in, say, the area you want to live in and then your max budget, and see what you could have bought in the last 2 to 3 months. No older, you know, ideally 2 months or less. Because then you'll see a red thread there, whether it's all 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartments with parking, or, you know, whatever else it is. But if you then all of a sudden see something out of the ordinary, like a 3-bed or a 4-bedder, when everything else has been 2-bedders, you know that there's something wrong with that. There's something there, that there's a reason why that bought within, you know, sold within your budget. So if you're fixated on a particular size of a property, then do the map view, because then you can see if you're insistent on getting a 3-bedder, then see where you could have bought a 3-bedder. Right? This is facts.
Yes.
There's no point barking up the wrong tree. There's no point with the wishful thinking. So then you can do your own research like that and go, okay, well, I want to be in Newtown, but I can't afford it. Maybe I need to look in Ashfield instead. Boom, you've just cut 3 months of your time wasted, with that. Make sure you're on every agent's mailing list, because they will send you pre-market stuff so that you can, the off markets, which is not off market, but hey, you get there with everybody else on their sales list, which is fair. It's still better than everybody on domain, I think that get started with that. And then, listen to my podcast, listen to your podcast.
Absolutely. Educate yourself.
Educate yourself. But also know who not to listen to. Sometimes it's hard because I get to speak with people who they've got analysis paralysis. There's so much going on, and
they're looking at the inflation data, they're looking at the RBA minutes, and like, how does this affect you buying your one property in this one particular area, in this one particular street?
Yes. Yeah. Local market knowledge is very different to, the Sydney market has gone up by this. Actually, I can tell you that, the Balmain market is very different to the market in Marrickville and to the market in Bronte. And, there are all these micro markets. So it's, just focus on what you're doing. That's.
We're singing from the same hymn sheet, my friend. That's exactly what we tell people, which is focus on running your own race and where you're looking to buy. And nothing beats a prepared and organised buyer. Like if the right property came on the market, that's what I tell everyone, if the right property came on the market next week, could you buy it? If the answer is no, then you get yourself organised, because all it takes is one listing to change everything.
Yes.
For you and I and a home buyer
100%.
or an investor.
Yeah,
awesome. And Michelle, I want to say thank you very much. I really appreciate it. It's like I said, it's a real kudos to you. You've been in the industry, you still love what you do. I think that's a real testament to the way that you show up and the content you're putting out. So
thank you.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure being here. I mean, I could talk property until the cows come home.
This is correct. This is what happens. When we get great guests in, they're like, is that time up? And I'm like, we'll get you back on for part 2 at some point in the future. So look, if you're looking to buy in the Sydney market, if you're wanting some really, really good sage advice, Michelle May is definitely a person you want to have a chat to, and we'll include all the details to your business and your contact info as well.
Thank you.
And if you know someone, so we always say, we talk about this ripple effect. So if you know someone that's trying to buy and you've already bought, or you're trying to inspire them and they want to hear from a professional, then share this episode, because we're loving the fact that people are sharing it, because that ripple effect is getting bigger and bigger with everyone as well. So I want to say thank you very much for tuning in. Until next time, take care.